are in chapter 9. Frank, can I ask you to push the little box? Does anyone remember what verse we're on? 22. Deepa, are you there?
I think it's 25.
25.
I think 23 actually.
22, 23, 25. Well, let's do. Read the English of 22, and I'll let you know if we did it.
The English?
Yeah. So if we did it last week, I'll know when I hear it.
Oh, I think we have to start at 24. But anyway, I bookmarked it in my Kindle, so I see it now. It's 24.
Okay, so let's do 24 then.
Okay. Just a second.
We have technical difficulties.
Aham hi sarva yajnanam bhokta cha prabhureva cha natu mama bijananti tatvena tascha vantite. I alone am the enjoyer in and the Lord of all sacrifices. But they do not know me in essence, and hence they return to this mortal world.
Yes. So again, for new people, let's review the 3 levels of teaching that go on in Bhagwad Gita. The lowest level is what we call a Dharma Shastra. It gives us good moral teaching, how to behave in the world. Very important. The second level of teaching is for us to be identified with Arjuna, the spiritual everyman, the spiritual every person. So he is a stand-in for our quest for self-realization. Essentially, we're identified with the subtle body. Then you can be identified with Krishna. When Krishna talks about himself, he's not talking about a God out there. He's talking about yourself. So when he says, I, Krishna, am so and so and such, it doesn't do us any good to say, oh, Krishna's so wonderful. He's talking about what's true about. Now, let's go back a bit and review what the problem is. Our problem is spiritual ignorance. We call it avidya. I do not know my real nature. As a result of that, I have a phenomenon called superimposition. Adhyas. I superimpose upon myself the qualities of the not self. Now, this doesn't really touch the self. All of this occurs in the mind. Both bondage and liberation occur to the mind. The self is ever free. What is my bondage? This deeply rooted conviction. It's like a dream. It's like hypnotism. That I think I'm the body. And its cause is spiritual ignorance. Its cause are these deeply rooted impressions in the unconscious. So difficult to break. There is no other liberation than the annihilation of these vasanas, these sanskaras, which then gives us the direct experience. Oh, I'm not a person. I'm not the body. I'm not the mind. I'm not the thoughts. I'm not my history. I'm not my trauma. What am I? Chidananda Rupaham. I'm of the form of bliss consciousness. Sangoham. I am unattached to all of that. Now, that doesn't change yourself. It changes the mind. So this is what's important to understand. It's not that I'm going to take my miserable, self-pitying, whiny ego and change it into Superman or Superwoman. It's not what happens. I begin to see I'm not all the things I thought I was. And practices to let go, to drop all of that. So for example, Trevor, you said you've done some Vipassana. So Buddhism absolutely denies the reality of any permanent sense of self. That's foundational to Buddhism. Have you heard that before?
Yes, anatta.
Yeah. And what we would say in yoga is we also absolutely deny any reality, any permanence to the personal sense of self. What I call jiva bhavana, the attitude of feeling like a person. Now, what yoga says is, what Vedanta says, what Gita says is, behind that impermanent sense of self is a ground of being like Buddha nature, which is birthless, changeless, it's vast and empty like the sky. There's nothing there, and it shines as pure awareness. Is this an idea that you're familiar with, Trevor?
I'm familiar with that.
Yeah. That's Krishna. Same thing. Same thing. So understanding that this is the frame that we're talking about. And what we've talked about was sacrifices as our metaphor, the Vedic sacrifice. And we talked about Deva Yajna, sacrifice to the gods, the demigods. So you go to a pundit and they give you a mantra to be wealthy. Or they give you a mantra to cure your tummy ache. Or they give you a mantra for long life. They give you a mantra to be successful in your business or at school. All of this is Deva Yajna. I want to get something from God. And the subtler meaning of that is if you propitiate the presiding principle over a field of human endeavor, then the God gives you the remnant of the sacrifice. Or for example, if you're a student, if you propitiate the school God, work hard at school, get good grades, and you graduate. The translator God. You got to have vocabulary in 2 languages. But if you study, you learn all that, you propitiate that God, then you get the remnant of the sacrifice, meaning you get the gig. You understand? That's what Deva Yajna is. And what he's saying here, we talked about this, that Deva Yajna, going after this sort of thing, is always temporary. We get to Swarga, heaven, and it's always temporary. I get to enjoy the fruits of my work, but then I run out of money. I run out of the prestige. And then I'm forced back into this world. What he's going to get to is there's a way out. I'm not caught up in this karma chakra. It's interesting. I've just begun to study the Yoga Sutras. Patanjali calls it karma chakra, the wheel of karma. He breaks it down, he calls it vritti sanskara chakra. A thought creates an impression. I act on that, which creates another thought, another impression, another thought, another impression. The more you do it, the denser it gets. Ever had the feeling, oh, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to eat this, I'm not going to say this, but you do it anyway. Ever had that feeling?
Yeah.
I love what St. Paul says in his letter to the Romans. I do not do that which I would do, and I do that which I hate. Therefore, it's not I that do it, but sin that is lodged in my limbs. He called it sin. We would call it vasana. We would call it sanskara, impressions, deep impressions that run our lives if we let them. This is the wheel of karma. This is the result of going after the world. That leaves an impression, and I do it over and over and over again. And I've developed an addictive relationship with the world. The more I do it, the more encapsulated the mind becomes. Meaning I cannot see who I am. Then I have all these thoughts of self. One day I think, oh, I'm doing so well, blah, 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 blah. And the next day, oh, I'm such a failure. I'm a lousy mother or wife or husband or son, or I failed at work. Or we externalize it. How could they have said that to me? Don't they know who I am? All caught up in trying to protect a personal sense of self. With this in mind, would you be so kind as to read the English again? We can see how these pieces relate to that.
Sure. For I alone am the enjoyer in and the Lord of all sacrifices. But they do not know me in essence, and hence they fall or return to this mortal world.
So, what does he mean? I always use our little prayer stone here. And this is a stand-in for whatever person, place, thing, or situation that I've gotten attached to. And we've gone over and over again, the dynamic of pleasure. I determined that it's deer. So you went camping in Yosemite, right?
Right.
You like camping?
Yes.
I hate it. It's dirty and you can't take a bath. And you sleep on a lumpy ground. Do you like camping? Sang?
She's married to.
Okay. Do you like camping?
Yeah.
Okay. Some people like it, some people don't. So you determine what's dear. Via. Then I get proximate to my object of desire. I pack up the car, or you buy it, or you build it, or you do something to get proximate to your object of desire, that person, place, thing, or situation. That's called Buddha. And when desire and object of desire become one, Pramoda, a point of pleasure. Actually, that's a taste of the bliss of my self-nature. For a moment, the mind is freed from its longing. But what Krishna is saying here is, everybody is always tasting me, meaning whatever pleasure you get in the world, it's only yourself. But because of ignorance, I do not know this. I then think the pleasures in the person, place, thing, or situation. And it leaves an impression. It's just a mild impression. We can call it a sanskara. No big deal. But if it's a deep impression over much repetition, we call it a vasana. Then it has the power to further encrust the mind, deeper into ignorance. So in the beginning, especially when we're talking about practices like vairagya, renunciation or dispassion or detachment, that desire to give up our attachment to worldly enjoyments, that's only at the rudimentary beginning. What Krishna is saying here is, well, we fooled you. There's no such thing as worldly enjoyment. It's yourself. It's yourself. So there's a practice implied here, incredibly important practice. Listen carefully. Shrunahu. Watch your mind. Always are watching our minds. We take on the practice of Sakshi Bhava, the attitude of the witness. Watch your mind when you're stuck, wanting. Vancha. It's the word in Sanskrit. I want. Kama. This is one of the words the Buddhists use. Craving. Krishna, thirsting. Spriha, longing. What does it feel like to want something you don't have? It sucks. And the more I want it, the further away it is, the more unavailable it seems, the more it hurts. So the yogi wants to pay attention to that. Ego will say, I'm unhappy because I don't have what I want. Yoga says, I'm unhappy because I'm stuck wanting again. You can't flip it off like a light switch. But at least, as Shankara says, don't embrace a rotting corpse thinking it's a beautiful bride. I love that metaphor. That's what we do. Oh, the car. Oh, the car. He's not here this evening, but little Max was here last week. I had no idea they own a Tesla. Remember I was talking about Teslas last week?
Yes.
Just popped into my head. So they were telling me that big deal when they had their Tesla. Now it's just a car. It's hard to park in this damn neighborhood. You know? They get parking tickets like any other car. You know, where the heck do you plug it in here? You know, we don't have a garage. You know, it's a car. But isn't that our experience with so much of the world? 95 cents worth of work, nickels worth of pleasure. And vancha, wanting. So we pay attention to our suffering. Own it. Don't fool yourself into thinking the reason I'm suffering is because I don't have what I want. I'm not getting my needs met. My needs are minimal. Food, clothing, and shelter. Those are our needs. All the rest, bunch wanting. Then pay attention to pleasure. It's hard. Nobody wants to be mindful when you're having a good time. Are you telling me, Jim, that pleasure always tastes the same? You mean an ice cream cone and beautiful music and making love and beautiful sceneries of nature, they all do the same thing? Yes, we are fooled by the diversity of sensory perceptions. Seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling. And it will vary in intensity and it will vary in duration, depending again on how badly we wanted it and how thoroughly the situation met my desire. But what it does to my mind is the same. So this is what Krishna means when he says, I'm the enjoyer in every sacrifice. I want to have a drink of water. The fool says, oh, I was so thirsty. The water is so good. The yogi says, I want to have a sip of water. Oh, that really stopped my mind. Once you realize this, you can begin to enjoy the world consciously. The world will not bind us. We know that it's only a means to experience the bliss of the self. So in this verse, Krishna is saying, everybody's worshiping me all the time, they just don't know it. And they're doing it by the wrong means. They're doing it in a way that further binds them into addictive relationships. So this is why it's important to cultivate a meditation practice, so that you begin to have a taste of the bliss of yourself, independent of the world. Now, the cool thing, ruthless rule of the mind will return to the experience that's given it the greatest joy. All you have to have is a spontaneous samadhi, or even just deep peace once. And then your mind will say, oh, I want to get back there. Then the same engine of desire that drove us into the world, raga and vesha, now is turned towards the self. What do we call that? Mumukshutva, the burning desire for liberation. It's very cool. And it's very scientific the way it's laid out. Any questions about this?
Just a comment. Thank God, God is the most beloved. You said.
Yes. Now, I will frequently have a conversation with Buddhists, and I might ask, well, what's your take on the Four Noble Truths? Oh, I don't know what those are. I forget what they are. They were the first turning of the wheel of Dharma of the Buddha. They're foundational to Buddhism. If you don't grasp those, the rest of the practice makes no sense. First noble truth, the truth of dukkha, suffering. Life, the way most people live it, sucks. It's dukkha, suffering, pain. Foolish people think, well, it's because in those times there was starvation and no medicine and stuff like that. Now it's all different. No. Everybody suffers. Why do we suffer? Noble truth number 2. The cause of suffering is kama, craving. Noble truth number 3, freedom from kama, from craving, is freedom from suffering. The ordinary person experiences it easily in 2 states: when I satisfy a desire and in deep sleep. Everybody loves deep sleep. I am free from my craving. Whatever problems you have in the world, they go away in time. Your craving mind is all folded up. The question, can I be permanently free from that dynamic? Yes. Buddha called it the Eightfold Path. We would call it sadhana, spiritual practice, yoga. Any thoughts on this? Without a clear understanding of this, spiritual life doesn't make a lot of sense to people. All right, next verse, please.
So verse 25.
Yes.
Yanti deva vrata devan pitrun yanti pitruvrata bhutani yanti bhuteja yanti madhyajenopi mam. The worshippers of the devas or gods go to the devas. To the pitris or ancestors go to the ancestor worshippers. To the bhutas or the elements go worshippers of the bhutas. But my worshippers come unto me.
So, whatever you place as your highest good That's where you go. That's where your mind goes. So from the standpoint of ritual, there are those people who worship the devas, the demigods, and they do their puja to do that. There are other people who are into ancestor worship. Other people we would call materialists. They worship the elements, the people, places, things, and conditions of the world. But these schools of thought are still here. If we take the definition of the devas as the presiding principle over a field of human endeavor, if you think being a computer programmer is where happiness is, you will go to that. If you think getting married and having children, that's what's going to do it, go to that. If you think being a musician is going to do it. Ancestor worship, the way I like to look at it is that's a lot of psychology. I'm going to delve into my family of origin to find the causes of all my issues. There's value in it up to one point. I had a fascinating conversation with someone this past week. So he came out of the closet as a gay man in his 50s. And he had a deep, deep secret that he'd never shared with anybody. He was sexually molested repeatedly from the age of 12 to 15. He's European, and the baker was the perpetrator. Part of the issue was he liked it, as children do. So there was the shame that he enjoyed it, he knew it was bad, and all this kind of stuff. And he was wondering whether or not he should tell his mother. Well, we had this conversation after he told his 83-year-old mother. Not sure that was the wisest thing to do for an old lady. And so he spills his guts, and her response was it the baker? She knew. Oh, I remember when he brought you a birthday cake on your 13th birthday. Oh, by the way, what about blah, 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 blah. She just changed the subject. And my friend was just furious. You think she would say, oh, I'm so sorry, we didn't know. How horrible. But no, she was just shut down. She didn't respond at all. And he was furious. How could she be so narcissistic and so unfeeling? And she's a sociopath. I said to him, we'll call him X. I would put money on the fact that your mother was sexually abused as a child. That's why she didn't respond. And as she dealt with her own sexual abuse by disassociating, shutting down, compartmentalizing. And that's why she could not have an appropriate response to your abuse. Nor probably could she stop it when and if she knew what was going on. This is ancestor worship, where we keep going back. Well, who was the perpetrator for the 83-year-old mother? Were they abused? These are family jewels that we just pass on from generation to generation. Hurt people hurt people. Now, there are positive things we pass on too. But many people, yes, it can be of value to look at some of these issues, especially if we ourselves have been in denial about it and haven't faced it. But there are those of us who then totally identify with it. They become the victim of child abuse. They become the rape victim. They become the child of the alcoholic father. That becomes their identity, and they carry that into the present as an identity. This making sense?
Yes.
Yes. This is ancestor worship, where who I am is the past. So if that's your focus, that's what you become. The Bhutas, in Hindi, this means ghosts. It's not what it is in Sanskrit. It means the elements, the material elements. So those people who are atheist, agnostic, totally secular, the world has no purpose, no meaning, no value, no intelligence. There are people, for example, in the world who have no moral compass. There are politicians who blatantly lie because it works for them. No sense of conscience or of other people. Socrates was once asked what vexed him, what upset him the most. He said, the prosperity of the wicked. Yogis know no one escapes. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, there's the statement, I think it comes from the Old Testament, but I can't remember exactly which book. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. You don't have to do it. All comes back. So people who think they're going to find their good in the world. We talked about, you take the word God, you stretch it, and we add another O, G-O-O-D. Your good is your God. You may think you worship God, but whatever is the important value in your life, drugs, sex, and rock and roll, cash and prizes, whatever it is, that's your God. Krishna says, if that's what you worship, that's where you go. But my devotees come to me. So we have the karma chakra, the wheel of life. Well, this didn't work, maybe I'll try this. Well, that didn't work, maybe I'll try that. Well, that didn't work, maybe the other thing. We go round and round, lifetime after lifetime, looking for love in all the wrong places. But underneath that is another law, another force, which we call dharma. What we're really seeking is God consciousness. We just may not consciously know it yet. but eventually you'll open to it. It's part of who we are. It is as much an inevitability as puberty is for the human body. Nobody chooses puberty. We make a lot of choices because of it. Nobody really chooses the spiritual life. But a point will come when you can't do anything else. And you'll make choices because of that. So we're not stuck going around in a circle for the rest of eternity. We're also going to come home. Till finally we are open to the idea. All these spiritual books in some way talk about God being the answer. I'm not sure what the problem is. Somehow I get the sense that God is the answer. Here Krishna is saying, don't worry. When you get to that point, my devotee comes to me. Vedanta is the most compassionate of all religions. Nobody fails. Nobody's left behind. Nobody's thrown permanently into the pits of hell. Everybody comes home eventually. Any thoughts or questions on this? Next verse.
Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhavatyupahrit mashranami prayatatmanah.
This is one of the most famous verses in the whole Gita. Tell us the English, please.
Whoever offers me with devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, water that I accept, offered by the pure-minded with devotion.
Yes. So the idea here is that you don't have to offer lots of money to the temple or the church. You don't have to give all your money to the guru. Truth, this work cannot be bought. It cannot be sold. But we offer something to the Lord. A flower, a leaf, some water. My view on it, everything belongs to him except my stupid kleshas, my character defects. Those are mine. That's really all I have to offer to the Lord. Swamiji tells a story. He was at the ashram in Mumbai. That's beautiful flowers everywhere. One of the devotees picked flowers from the ashram and gave them to Swamiji as an offering. He says, you give me flowers from my own garden.
He did really. He really did say that.
There's a wonderful prayer that comes out of the 12-step tradition. My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. What's so interesting, oftentimes we can't tell what's good and what's bad. And it goes on, I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character, our doshas, our kleshas. It stands in the way of my usefulness to you and to my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. You done that prayer,
Yes.
Cicely? Very, very famous. I had an argument with a friend. We're talking about what sin was. So she would say, fear is not a sin, it's not on the list. I said, well, playing with yourself is not really a sin. Self-centered fear is. Saying a 4-letter word is not going to be a problem. But self-centered fear is. What is a sin? What is a klesha? What is a dosha? Klesha means affliction. Dosha means defect, like a disease. Anything that separates us from the love of God or the love of another person. And if you're a mature yogi, you will have this experience. Oh, I am incredibly powerless over a whole lot of these things. I want to give this up. I'm going to be disciplined. I have the mind of a rebel. Whenever I've set my mind with a task like that, off to the races in the opposite direction. Anybody else have a mind like that? Yeah. So I have had to take the path of surrender. I let Krishna do it. I let Jesus do it. My Creator, I'm now willing for you to have all of me. So the flower, the leaf, the lump of clay, the water. These are only metaphors for even the smallest, most trivial thing. Everything, offer it to God. Most importantly, offer the afflictions of your heart. Any thoughts on this?
Does it matter which form of God someone turns to? It's all the same thing.
Krishna, in an earlier chapter, has said, in whatever way men approach me, so am I to them. In the end, it's your self-nature. But if you want to have God as an external intelligence, power, and force, doesn't matter. One of the most famous prayers that many people do is called Lalita Sahasranam. This is the 1,000 names names of the goddess. In Islam, they have the 99 names of God. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you call God. But understand that the way you pray will reveal your theology. Make sure you don't have a neurotic God. What I mean by that, you can do this. I share this prayer. This is the prayer most of us are taught as kids, and in some way or form repeat. Oh God, please make Dad give me the car so I can go out with Billy or Sue or Krishna. And if you do, I promise to stop smoking. And in that prayer are all the theological errors that keep our prayers from happening. Oh God, please, as if my begging or pleading or yearning is going to change God. The love of God, the mercy of God, the grace of God is a constant. It's my kleshas, my doshas, my character defects that block me off from it. God doesn't need to change. Prayer works, but prayer changes the one who's praying. Prayer doesn't change God. So we go, oh God, please. And then what do we want to do? Manipulate another person. Make Dad give me the car. As if we know what's best. Why? So I can get what I want. So I can go snogging with Billy or Sue. Shame and guilt. And then we want to make a bargain. There's no such God. No such God, but there is a God. The most effective prayer we can ever do is the prayer of surrender. Is that useful, Trevor?
Yeah. Yes. Would prayers asking for a change of character count as petitionary in that way?
We'll talk about that more if you want to stay a little bit afterward. Those are great questions. Great questions. All right, I forget how many shlokas we have in this chapter, Deepa.
I can look, just a second. We have 34.
34. Okay, so we've got almost 8 or 9 more, don't we?
Yes, so
Okay.
you just
Next one.
Yat karoshi yadashnasi yajjuhoshi dadasi yat tapasyasi kaunteya tat kurushva madarpanam. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer in sacrifice, whatever you give in charity, whatever you practice as austerity, O Kaunteya, do it as an offering to me.
So O Kaunteya means son of Kunti. That was his mother, Arjun's mother. So here Krishna is giving us another practice, what I call the practice of the presence of God. So as you're in the world, how would you behave? How would you act? How would you think if Buddha were with you, Krishna were with you, Jesus were with you, Moses were with you? Doesn't matter what form you would choose to use. If you want a formless notion, the idea of the presence of God. How would you act? Shankara uses this wonderful metaphor. He says, even the most terrible rascal behaves in the presence of his mother. Same idea. So whatever you do it for God. Prayer I do. Good morning, God. This is Jim reporting for duty, reporting for work. I think I've shared with you the prayer I learned that was Father Michael Judge's. Lord, take me where you want me to go. Let me meet who you want me to meet. Tell me what you want me to say and keep me out of your way. Love that. You have a new employer. You're working for God now. You have a new spouse. You get a new spouse. New kids. Change out. Now, God. Gifts of God. Incarnations of God. And make every task sacramental. Make washing the dishes a sacramental action. As if you were like preparing an altar. Cooking the food, make it sacramental. Doing the laundry, make it sacramental. Do everything with your mind fixed on the divine. It's a wonderful practice. Wonderful practice. Sounds easy, and it's really a challenge. I want to get into resentment. I want to get into self-pity. Live a sacred life. Doesn't mean being a goody-goody. It means keep your mind fixed on the end. All right. I know you have to catch a BART train, so I think we'll end a little bit early tonight.
is able to help give you
I'll
a
give
back.
you-
Pardon?
I'll give you a ride.
Yes, thank you.
We're fine? Okay, then we'll go on a little bit longer. All right, next verse.
शुभाशुभफलैरेवं मोक्षस्य कर्मबन्धने संन्यासयोगयुक्तात्मा विमुक्तो मामुपैष्यसि. Thus shall you be freed from the bonds of actions, yielding good and evil fruits. With the mind steadfast in the yoga of renunciation and liberated, you shall come unto me.
So as he's done throughout this whole scripture, he redefines the word yoga. In the old-timey days, yoga meant specifically the various practices of Ashtanga yoga, the yamas, niyamas, asana, pranayama, etc., all those sorts of things. But the root of yoga means union. can say yoga is a synonym for samadhi. That state, the mind is yoked to the self. So here, this is the yoga of renunciation. So the person who practices this sacramental view of the world this is the true and deepest renunciation. To give up the idea of particular things being good and bad. Yoga Vasishta. They talk about 3 states of the ego. 2 are conducive to liberation, and 1 is conducive to bondage. The first one that's conducive to liberation. I do nothing. I'm ever the witness of the world, which is illusion, mithya. Pratibimba, like a reflection in a mirror. Ego state number 2, which is conducive to liberation. I do everything. Who I am is what's making my eyes blink. Moving cars up and down Grand Avenue. And spinning stars. And all of this is God. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. All this is verily. The third ego state, which is conducive to bondage. I, the individual, do this particular action. Someone else does another action. I like this and I don't like that. And I think I'm my body. Now, in the end, even those first 2, but the real sannyas is to give up that personal sense of self. It's not about running around in an orange robe with a 5-syllable unpronounceable name. Give up the identification with the ego. Give up any personal sense of self. Give up the belief that the world is separate from me, and parts of it are joy-giving and parts of it are misery-producing. This is real sannyas. Any thoughts on this? All right, we'll quit here. What's our verse for next week to start?
28, not 9.
29, is that right, Deepa?
Yes, 29.
29 for next week. All right, we'll end here then. Om Purnamata Purnamita Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha